This week, Netgear has some issues coming off the heels of a bug bounty program. They've got a pretty major vulnerability that wasn't part of the bug bounty program. If you forget your password, you can give it to Facebook to hold on to it for third-party services. We'll talk about whether that's a good idea or not. Also, PostScript has a bug that's been in circulation for 32 years that allows people to exploit printers. We'll talk about that one. We will also talk about ways which you can use sound waves to take down drones. Then we'll bring on Don Pezet from IT Pro TV and dig into a hotel that was completely shut down by ransomware. All that and more on this edition of Hack Naked News. This is a Security Weekly production.
This episode of Hack Naked News is brought to you by IT Pro TV, an easy, entertaining approach to online IT training. Access over 2,000 hours of up-to-date, high-quality video content live and on demand via Chromecast, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, PC, or your mobile device. IT Pro TV's premium membership grants access to all courses, transcripts, virtual machine labs, and transcender practice exams. Corporate and group pricing are available. For a free 7-day trial and 30% off the life of your account, visit itpro.tv/hacknaked and use the code HN30. Do you have a website, an external presence, employees, an office? Any of these can be compromised and attacked. How are you defending these assets? Have you penetration tested them? Start 2017 by taking a proactive approach to your vulnerable areas. Black Hills Information Security has been helping companies find their weaknesses since 2008. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to see how they can help you sleep better at night. Gain control of cyber risk with Tenable.io, the first vulnerability management platform built for today's elastic assets like cloud, containers, and web apps. Discover a fresh, asset-based approach that prioritizes vulnerabilities while seamlessly integrating into your environment. Improve ROI with the first elastic licensing approach based on assets, not IP addresses. Tenable.io delivers the data and context you need to secure your elastic attack surface. Start your free Tenable.io trial by visiting tenable.io.
Welcome, everyone, to Hack Naked News. This is episode 109, and it is January 31st, 2017. I'm reporting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, and I'm Paul Sidorian. Did I say that? I don't know if I said. Anyway, a couple announcements before we get to Don Pezet, who's waiting in the wings patiently. We will deliver some expert commentary on a hotel that was a victim of ransomware. Couple of quick announcements to get us started. Of course, itpro.tv has updated courseware in Cybersecurity Analyst Plus, CCNA, Cyber Ops, ITIL Operations Support and Analysis, and Microsoft System Center. February 1st is the day in which you can qualify for a premium membership regardless of your current membership level. So make sure you go to itpro.tv/hacknaked for more information. Couple more quick announcements. InfoSec World, get your 10% off discount code to promote your OS 17SW is the discount code to get you 10% off. InfoSecWorld.misty.com. SourceConference.com is where you can go and get $100 off of training at Source Boston. The code is Security Weekly, and it's good for a conference ticket or the trainings. Make sure you go to those websites to get all of the information, and they're taking place in April. Of course, Source Boston is in Boston. InfoSec World is in sunny Orlando, Florida. There's a charity event happening at RSA on the Wednesday of the event from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's the Shaves That Save. That's right. Those of us in the security industry who are not already bald will be shaving their heads to support St. Baldrick's children's cancer research. More details can be found in our wiki.securityweekly.com. On to the security news for this week. Hundreds of thousands, some say millions, of Netgear routers are vulnerable to a password bypass. It's more like a password disclosure. A security research at TrustWave discovered an authentication disclosure vulnerability, which is how I'm deeming it, in 20 different models of Netgear routers. Simon Kennan analyzed some exploits released in 2014 and eventually figured out that with just one request to the web administration interface, the routers would reveal the admin password. The flaw was part of the password recovery functionality in the associated firmware. In those terms, it was working really, really well. Simon's post is a great read and details how one of the web application's server-side script ignored any past parameters and simply returned the current admin password. After a long disclosure process, Netgear has released firmware to update and correct this issue, which largely will go ignored by users, as often is the case there. Forgot your GitHub password? Facebook can have it for you. That's right. Facebook published an open specification for password recovery. Sources state that password recovery methods that use email and cell phone SMS messages to recover your password are insecure. Well, because someone could already have access to your email or have stolen your phone. The solution? Provide Facebook with a token so when you forget or lose your password to another service, you can log into Facebook and Facebook will recover that service's account. I failed to see how your Facebook account is any more or less secure than your email or cell phone, but I digress. On the flip side, Facebook has implemented two-factor authentication using the Open U2F standard, which I've tested and I really like. At least that's a step in the right direction. And as I said, this program can currently be used in conjunction with GitHub. We don't want to alarm you, but we really do. PostScript makes your printer an attack vector. While many printer vulnerabilities and associated exploits garner little attention, this one has the potential for disaster. Attackers have figured out a way to create a malicious web page that will determine determine which systems have a printer connected to it or on the same network as a printer. From there, attackers use PostScript, essentially cross-site scripting, or in this case, a cross-site printing attack vector against your printer. So until the printer is rebooted, this code is running on your printer and basically gives an attacker the ability to intercept all print jobs sent to that printer, even ones sent by other users. This vulnerability is believed to be present in printers supporting PostScript, which represents most printers released in the past 32 years. Some nifty attack vectors come into play in order to pull this attack off, including cross-origin resource sharing, or CORS, and abusing XML HTTP request using JavaScript. Full details of this attack, along with proof of concept code, can be found at this website, get this, hacking-printers.net. Word is more printer exploits will be released on this site in the future, so check back for some more printer carnage. And in our final story, if you ever wanted to take out a drone, you can do so with sound waves. Similar to the way in which you can make a wine glass crack by sending out a particular signal, you can do the same thing with drones. So by sending these sound waves, which are inaudible to humans, researchers figured out a way to disrupt drones. In a talk at Enigma 2017, Yongdae Kim, professor in the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology's Graduate School of Information Security, wow, that was a mouthful, showed how active and passive sensors can be hacked by simple laser pointer or speakers set on just the right frequency. Thankfully, this is an easy attack to block, as you can simply cover the transparent sections of your drone's important parts in masking tape. Not recommended that the people do that. That would be bad. On to our expert commentary. Mr. Don Pezet from IT Pro TV is waiting in the wings to comment on our story on ransomware.
LogRhythm's Netmon Freemium delivers real-time network visibility to quickly identify emerging threats in your IT environment. Netmon Freemium is a free commercial-grade network forensics and traffic analytics solution. You can use Netmon Freemium's powerful capabilities to search against all of observed network traffic, identify abnormal traffic patterns in application usage, and quickly analyze full packet captures. Take the first step towards real-time network visibility. Visit logrhythm.com/freemium to learn more and download it today. Has your network been breached? approached? Cybereason can help you answer this question. Cybereason products hunt for threats within your network and eliminate them in real time. To Cybereason, real time means within seconds. Founded by former military hackers who don't play by the rules, they've built this experience into their platform. Harness ingenuity and imagination, not just code, to defeat hackers. Cybereason. Disrupt the adversary and let the hunt begin.
Don, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Paul. And a lot of exciting stuff going on right now, isn't there?
There is. It was not as many stories as usual, but some really, the ones that I found were really interesting. If you could weed through all of that political nonsense that I even found crept its way into many of my security feeds, which for me was a little disappointing, but I digress again. So ransomware shut down a hotel. And this was kind of an interesting story, as 180 people or so had checked into this hotel. They got hit with ransomware, and they're like, we can't reissue key cards to people, and we can't check people out. How's that going to work? But Don, I want to get your take on the story. I want to steal your thunder here, because as you were saying before the show, this is one that you're kind of familiar with and we're talking about just before the show.
Yeah, this one hit my radar really fast because the original headlines were ransomware locks hotel guests in their rooms. And when I heard that, I thought, wow, this has got to be fake news, right? Because fire code says doors have to be able to open out. You can't lock somebody in their room. And sure enough, it turns out the headlines were over-exaggerated and poorly researched and, all the stuff we kind of expect from the media these days.
Absolutely.
But it did highlight a very real problem, which is schools, businesses, hotels, they're getting hit by ransomware left and right. These organizations are doing next to nothing to stop it. And then what do they do when it happens? They do the same thing this hotel did, which is they pay the bill.
Yeah, and that's how they got rid of the ransomware. However, as we've been discovering, ransomware isn't just ransomware. It usually leaves behind some kind of backdoor after you pay the ransom. In fact, I accidentally skipped over a story about the Washington surveillance cameras were hit with ransomware. And they were like, oh, we'll just wipe all the systems and reinstall all the software. But, make sure that you obviously correct the problem that led to ransomware in the first place. Which is
That's right. I mean, they had to take advantage of some kind of exploit to get the ransomware installed. There had to be some vulnerability in your system. And if you pay the ransom and they graciously decrypt your files for you because they're doing you a service, right? So they do that. And then you go and run antivirus or whatever it is you do and clean that mess up. What they do is they give you a key to decrypt the software. And then the software, their software is still running on your computer. And if you remove their software, that's kind of removing their little message saying, hey, don't re-encrypt this machine. And if you haven't fixed the vulnerability, it just gets reinfected and re-encrypted, and then you have the opportunity to graciously pay them again. It's one of those things where you can't just fix the symptom, you've got to fix the cause, and most people just don't understand that.
Yeah. What I find interesting is when we talk about network segmentation, and it's unclear like how tightly woven some of these systems are, or how this infection actually happened. As is the case with the Washington surveillance cameras, we don't know how the initial attack vector took place. It could be a default password. It could be that someone just clicked on something and willfully installed the ransomware on the system. However, for the ransomware to spread, in other words, to like a key card system or any other kind of physical computer system that has effects in the real world, like key cards, it's unclear like how did it do that spreading. And typically like it spreads over open network file shares and things of that nature, so it can really latch onto the organization and really just increase the chances that they're going to pay the ransom. What can we do to protect ourselves from that, Don?
Well, one of the things that I constantly find myself saying is, hey, just because something has a network card in it doesn't mean it has to be plugged into the network. That key card system, that should be an independent system, especially if it's a critical piece of your hotel's operation, right? That's a critical piece of business. It should be air-gapped. It's granted, it's not like a root certificate server. It's not that level of criticality, but for your operation, that should not be a computer people are using to browse the internet or use for any purpose other than issuing key cards. Computers are so inexpensive these days. To tell a hotel, hey, for $150 or $200, you can have a dedicated computer just for key card access that's not connected to the network. That's very simple. And they're just saying, this key card can open up room 223. Now, where that gets challenging is the hotels that have advanced services, where your key card is also like a debit card.
Yeah, then it's tied back to the user. Right.
And so now it's going to have to communicate. And if you've got one that has to communicate, well, you need to think about each of the computers that are in that network, and do they all need to be talking to each other? Because when one gets infected, they can spread. And it's not always an attacker from the outside. I think it was the Sony film studios that they showed where that one was an inside job, someone on the inside of the network. So they're already behind the firewall. You might not be connected to the internet and you could still get infected. But people need to seriously think about air gapping critical systems. The internet is not an essential piece of functionality for most businesses.
The other thing that they mentioned in the article, Don, was that they were going to go to a physical key backup to get into, to provide access to some of these rooms. Now, it was funny. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday about safes and the security of safes. And a lot of safes that my friends tell me like not to get, like one of the things to look for is see if it has a tubular lock on it as a backup. And a lot of the lower end safes will have a tubular lock or even a wafer lock, which they're pretty much equally as bad. There's essentially universal keys for both those type of locks. Wafer locks used to be popular in on cars and vehicles, and the tubular locks are like bike locks, and you see a lot on safes as well. But those basically have like universal keys that anyone can just go on the internet and buy. In fact, I have a wafer lock set and it works fantastic. I don't have either. I lost or I don't have the tubular lock. Those are a little more expensive. They can range anywhere from like 20 to 80 or a couple $100 depending on the model. And so now apply that to the hotel room. And as a kind of a safeguard, they're like, we need to provide a physical backup to all of these rooms. However, how secure is that backup? And what other security possibilities are you introducing by having this analog backup?
Well, your most valuable asset is yourself. Most people are concerned about protecting their person. And when you're in a hotel room, you go in the room, you close the door, and what do you have? You have a deadbolt, you have a latch, you have things like that that can protect you while you're in the room. And then when you leave the room, that's when you're kind of at the mercy of whatever locks are on that door. Well, I think everybody knows that the hotel's cleaning service has access to that room, even with the key cards. So there comes a point where you can't just assume there's so much security. I can't leave my diamond collection that unfortunately doesn't exist. But I can't leave that laying on the bed when I leave a hotel room, because I know the cleaning people are going to come in and they see valuables. I can't just say, well, boy, I don't trust that lock on that door, because I already know that there's people who that have access to that room. You just need to understand the exposure.
Or someone that's spoken with Deviant Ollam, the infamous lockpicker extraordinaire, who's a good friend of mine, and has seen him demonstrate actually making a device. It's like a metal hook that slides under the door and reaches around on the other side and pulls the lever. Now, of course, my line of questioning, being a security person, I'm like, okay, so what if I put the latch over? He's like, well, it makes it a lot more difficult, so absolutely do that. He's like, but it's not impossible to have another device that opens that. And I said, well, what about, I typically, because I'm a paranoid security person, right, I'll put a towel inside the handle that will like prevent something from hooking it in and prevent that handle from being pulled from the inside, which is more effective. And basically Deviant says that while none of it is impossible to overcome, it makes the level of the attack a lot more difficult, such that you're going to be the attacker is going to be standing outside that door like a lot longer trying to get around, the latch in the towel. And that's if you're obviously inside the room at the time. If you leave, you don't have the luxury of having those extra safeguards.
Yeah, and this goes beyond just hotels. I mean, if you think about physical cars, you've had blacksmiths with the Slim Jims that can slide inside of a window, and the keyless entry has helped with a lot of that, but there's always that keyed backup that you still have. So that's a pretty common scenario. But, here you've got a hotel that has a computer system that's critical. It gets ransomware, and they did the same thing that most businesses do. They looked at it and they said, all right, well, we need to check in guests, and the guests are paying, I don't know how much their hotel is, maybe $200 a night. Mm-hmm. So if you have 100 guests like that, that's a lot of money. And if the ransom is 1 Bitcoin, you go and you run the rate, and all right, it's $1,100. I could pay $1,100, or I could get the police involved. I was kind of surprised in this one. They did actually try and get the police involved. And that's where you've got a bigger challenge is once you get the federal government or the local police involved, the local police, they're not going to be able to help you much. It's going to end up going up higher. I've met several people up in the Department of Justice up in D.C. where they're the ones who can actually do something. But you're talking about weeks or even months-long investigations. So
Correct.
just to get your business back, if it's $1,100 to get your business back,
You just pay it.
that's what they do. They just pay it, which unfortunately is feeding this. And that's why we see so many new ransomware strains and variants that keep coming out every single day because it is a moneymaker. They are really drawing it in.
There's some great newer protection mechanisms on the market, Don, that I just wanted to mention really quick for our listeners, ones that I've been exposed to recently. One is from a sponsor, Cyber Reason. They make a free tool that detects ransomware. They have some advanced detection capabilities that's in their full product suite. However, they've taken like just the ransomware piece and they've made that freely available. We'd run it on the systems here just to have some extra protection against any type of ransomware that may sneak in. The other company that we interviewed on Startup Security Weekly was Eddie Brabitsky from Minerva Labs. They've got a really interesting endpoint product that essentially fakes a sandbox. So if the ransomware starts to, before it goes full-blown infecting the system, a lot of malware and ransomware will look to see if there are forensics tools on the system. It'll look to see if it's in a VM or running in some kind of sandbox that is trying to detect it. And what Minerva Labs does is simulate those sandbox and forensics tools so that the malware basically inoculates itself and says, nope, I'm not infecting that system. And it can simulate that for all the systems in your environment. So those are two newer techniques and solutions that I've seen on the market today that out of everything that's out there, I think traditional antivirus is useless in the ransomware scenario largely. But those are two newer techniques that I really like.
The other thing that they're not really mentioning in the articles is how companies should be resolving this. When they saw their key card system got infected, their IT person, or maybe they have a contractor that does or whatever, should have said, okay, well, let me unplug the network cable and restore my last backup of that key card machine.
Yep.
And then I can just flip the bird to the ransomware author and off I go, right? Mm-hmm. But inevitably what happens is they say, well, we didn't have a backup, or the backup's 3 months old and we can't go to it. If you've got good backups, even if you screw up security royally, you can still recover your system and get back in. You might have customer data leak, which is a completely different problem. But if you can restore your system from a backup, ransomware is not a giant threat to you.
Yeah,
People
it really
underinvest in backup.
It underscores for me the importance of good incident response and forensics, right? So I want to be able to quickly, if I need to, take a snapshot of that system before I wipe it away and restore from a backup. And then while that's happening, someone's analyzing that image to say, oh, they got in this way, or interview the users and say what happened. Figure out what happened so that when that system does come back up, you can remediate the issue before it goes back online. That's an ideal situation, and I think something that's of great interest to our listeners in that process that they've expressed interest in, and doing incident response, doing it well, and doing it very quickly, right? Because if the business is down, you got to get back up as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I find some people don't understand which of their systems are truly critical. So, you can do a business impact analysis, or you can bring in auditors, do a business impact analysis, and they'll show you which of your systems are actually critical. This key card system was critical. It's how people get access to their room. And those are systems that you should have redundancy for. Mm-hmm. You should have, maybe an offline spare if it's super critical, that kind of thing. And you just need to identify that. A lot of organizations pay the bare minimum they can to get their operation going. And so when events like this happen, that's just a cost of doing business. And when you really think about it, you probably couldn't get a business impact analysis done for $1,100. So if that's what this ransom cost them, they're actually ahead of the game after paying $1,100. If it only happens once. But it won't just happen once.
Exactly. Well, and I'm sure if the customers were inconvenienced, there may have been extra costs that were associated with that. So, Don, thank you very much for your insights on that. What's happening at itpro.tv?
Oh man, we have so much crazy stuff going on. We're launching content right now. It's actually filming at this moment for Cisco CyberOps Security. That's their new certification, making a big push there. So that's some really good content. We have some amazing security track courses that are lined up for over the summer that are going to be starting here soon. There's a penetration testing show going on right now that is very, very hands-on. Not a fundamentals and theory, but a hands-on thing. So definitely fun stuff to check out there. Lots of people wanting to learn more about security, and that's a good thing.
Awesome. Don Pezet from itpro.tv. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Hack Naked News. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. We'll see everyone next week.